Rope and line rescue has been around for as long as people have been getting themselves into danger. Success has depended on individual skill and judgment, and on good luck too. So naturally there have always been risks involved. But today there's a new ingredient: professionalism. The kinds of demands faced by modern rescue teams mean they have to be properly equipped and expertly trained. This is Aid Scott, editor of Technical Rescue magazine and an operational team leader with Hampshire's Technical Rescue Unit. In this video, we'll follow members of that unit as they demonstrate some of their basic rescue systems. Naturally, there are many possible variations. Each team in the field will have protocols of its own to cope with different work environments. Let's start with a checklist of the items that the properly equipped rope rescuer carries. Goggles or visor, helmet, chest harness or full body harness, abseil gloves, suitable clothing, suitable footwear, light source, ascender pack, pick-off sling, spare carabiners, multi-tool, sit or full body harness, main carabiner, casualty packaging evacuation triangle, victims carabiner, descender, pole strap or side D-rings, central D-ring main hard point, and retractable equipment lanyard. Now let's look at some of that equipment in action. Our casualty is a worker who has fallen from a platform. He's using a fall arrest system, and the fall has left him stranded. As the rescuer gets close to him, he talks to him to reassure him, assess his condition, and try to determine whether he's in any immediate danger. His first job is to climb above the casualty and find a suitable anchor point for the rope. The rope, along with a pre-rigged anchor sling, is bagged so that it can be deployed more easily. Having identified a suitable anchor point, the rescuer attaches the sling, ready for his descent. Identifying what is a suitable anchor point and rigging the rope properly are obviously crucial. First, the rescuer needs to locate the casualty's exact position, and then look around for an anchor point afterwards, one that's strong enough to bear the combined weight of the rescuer and the casualty. Let's consider a few possibilities. The frame supporting this ducting vent is set in concrete, so it's certainly worth considering. A lift housing structure would be excellent. Its size is no disadvantage, quite the contrary. If you choose a railing upright, attach your rope as low as possible to minimize leverage. Here, the anchor could go in one window and out of the other, supported by the brickwork between them. If there's a big enough tree handy, that's fine. Once again, attach the sling as low as possible. The top of a railing is not suitable because there would be too much leverage. Chimney stacks are notoriously dangerous. Many are structurally unsound and should be avoided. A possible anchor may look strong, but check it carefully. This one, in fact, is just a wooden box. The cladding on these pipes means you can't judge their integrity. The brackets are probably only providing light support. If there are no anchor options at all, a tripod or similar high support frame can be used instead. Here, a heavy-duty tripod has been fitted with a pulley system for lowering and raising, and this is backed up by a separate belay. This stone block looks suitable. When examining it, check carefully on the ground too. And here's why. A few scraps of glass are all too easy to overlook. Take a few moments to check for sharp edges on the anchor and sharp objects around it. In this case, a flat webbing sling will be used to attach the rope to the anchor point. The sling should be laid flat, not twisted, and be as low as possible on the anchor to minimize leverage. Once the sling is smoothly laid, the two eyes are clipped into a carabiner, which is then locked. If the anchor point has any sharp corners which could damage the sling or rope, padding must be inserted to provide protection. Instead of a sling, you could use a wire rope strop. For abseiling, the main rope itself could be wrapped around the anchor. Short lengths of low stretch rope are still another option. Things to be avoided include a twisted sling, broken glass, and locating the connection point too close to the anchor. This creates very high loads on the sling and the carabiner. The angle of the sling, the so-called Y, should be 90 degrees or less, rather than the 120 or so shown here. And here's something else to avoid. D-rings incorrectly positioned across the carabiner gate. Apply some load to make sure the components align correctly. Here's how it should be done. A tidy sling attachment with longer slings doubled around the anchor point and the ropes properly located in the carabiner. Alternatively, two carabiners can be used to connect the main rope to a steel anchor sling. Whenever possible, the primary anchor should be backed up by a second system attached to a separate anchor. This should ideally be in line with the primary anchor. This example uses a rescue sender which has a smooth profile cam, not toothed. It's attached to the rope ahead of the knot so that it backs up everything behind it: knot, loop, carabiners, sling and anchor. Here's another example of a backup, but this one is connected into the loop or loops of the main system. This backs up everything apart from a knot or loop failure. The technical rescue unit draws a distinction between rapid access rescue situations using a single rope and longer, more complex rescues using two 11mm ropes. Local protocols will dictate whether or not single rope systems are acceptable. This is a basic lowering system. The lowering rope on the right passes through a descender which bears the load. On the left is a backup rope that goes through an automatic belay device. So, having established a firm anchor point, the rescuer attaches his descender and prepares for descent. Lightweight rope packs can be attached to the rescuer's harness, as here, but a heavier one would be attached by a separate sling to the descender carabiner. Here we can see that different configuration. Attaching the bag to the descender means that the rescuer doesn't have to bear the weight. Using an auto-lock descender rather than a manual descender, such as a figure 8, enables the rescuer to control his descent more accurately. Wherever rope passes over an edge, it needs to be protected. In this case, a simple canvas roll-up is placed around the rope and secured with Velcro. Here we can see some different edge protection materials: thermoplastic tubing, cork matting, and some soft roll-ups secured with Velcro. And here are a few examples of edge rollers used with lowering systems in which the rope is continually moving. The rollers help to guide the rope as well as protect it. Having installed his edge protection, the rescuer's next job is to access the casualty and get his weight off his rope, or fall arrest lanyard, and onto his own. He uses his legs to align the casualty so that he can perform the necessary packaging. First, he connects himself to the casualty with a short sling or pick-off sling. Each item of equipment he uses is clipped on by means of carabiners. Carabiners are used for connecting rope and items of equipment. Let's have a look at some of the most widely used types. This is the oval screw gate. Both sides bear an equal load up to around 2,000 kilograms. The D type is slightly stronger because the load is directed along the spine rather than the gate. The HMS is pear-shaped for the smooth running of ropes during belaying with, for instance, a munter hitch. Here's the general purpose asymmetric, the commonest design now used in rescue work. It's very strong and offers a wide range of gate closure options. The Klettersteig was first developed for alpine climbers. Its wide-opening gate makes it useful in rescue work for clipping onto large structural points. This one is a dedicated rescue design which meets American NFPA standards and features the necessary size and strength to handle large diameter ropes. Here the rescuer uses a miniature pulley system to raise the casualty and release him from his fall arrest system. You can see the lanyard swinging free. In this case, the rescuer takes the load of the casualty on his own rope and lowers him gently onto his pick-off sling. Then he packs away the pulley system before starting descent. In a more critical situation, he could just as well abandon the pulley system, leaving it to be recovered later. Abseil gloves are often useful on abseil descents, depending on temperature, length of descent and other conditions, but they can limit finger dexterity and feeling, and sometimes lead abseilers to move too quickly during descent. Whether abseiling or lowering, low-stretch kernmantle ropes are the usual choice in rescue situations. They're also widely used in top rope belays, but where the fall factor is half or more, dynamic rope, as used by rock climbers, is an alternative worth considering. The two commonest rope diameters are 1/2 inch and 11 mm. 1/2 inch ropes are rated at around 4,000 to 5,000 kilograms, while 11 mm would be around 3,000. Also shown here is a smaller diameter cord used for prussiks, or as a lightweight throw line for subsequent hauling of heavier ropes and equipment. For easy deployment, rope is usually stowed in a bag. Here it's being stowed via a carabiner, a method called loose flaking. This makes sure that it will come out of the bag cleanly when needed. A rope's full strength is only available when the rope is straight. When it's bent, only some of the fibers are taking the load. That's because the inside fibers are compressed and effectively inactive, so whenever possible, rope should be passed over a wide radius edge and not a narrow one. Where there's a rope, sooner or later, there'll be a need for a knot. This is the fisherman's knot. Double or triple, it's used to join ropes together or to tie an endless loop. This next one is called a triple wrap prusik. It's an ascending knot that can be easily slid along a rope. And as soon as a load is applied, it'll lock. The fisherman's knot, the triple wrap prusik, and the figure 8, which you can see being demonstrated here, will between them cover just about any need the rescuer is likely to have. Figure 8s like this one are used to connect the rope to the anchor system and can be used in a single or double loop configuration. And for extra safety, a locking knot can be added as well. Before a descent begins, all the equipment should be checked. Starting at the top, the checker makes sure that the helmet is secure and loose straps are stowed. The chest harness is properly adjusted. Sit harness buckles properly fastened and webbing stowed. Leg loop buckles secure. Main descender carabiner done up properly, and pick-off sling with carabiner attached to the descender carabiner. Ensure the descender is properly connected to the rope and properly rigged. This can often be checked against a stamped diagram. Then there are the spare carabiners, multi-tool, evacuation triangle, the ascender pack, and the lighting. Check that it's working. Having all the right equipment makes sure the rescuer can cover a wide range of eventualities. Here the casualty is not in a harness. This time we'll suppose he's stranded on a cliff face or building ledge. During his descent, the rescuer keeps talking to the casualty to reassure him and assess his condition. Straddling him with his legs provides security and makes it easier to carry out packaging. Here the rescuer is unpacking an evacuation triangle, which is a large nappy-style harness. It gives more support to the upper body than a simple emergency sit harness. In this working position with some kinds of auto-locking descender, a hard lock is necessary to avoid a sudden drop caused by accidentally pressing the descent handle. This is how it's done. Now the rescuer fits the evacuation triangle around the casualty and clips it on. Then he clips a pick-off sling onto the evacuation triangle, locks the carabiner, and makes sure that everything is secure. Before starting the descent, the casualty must be coaxed into turning round and then gently sitting between the rescuer's legs, supported by the pick-off sling. This position makes sure he's held securely and won't impede the rescuer's movements. The casualty must also be protected on the way down, so if there are ledges or other obstacles in the way, the rescuer may need to use one arm to fend them off. As far as possible, descent should be controlled and carried out at a constant speed, whether as an abseil in this case, or lowering by colleagues from above. If the casualty needs to be medically packaged before being moved, a stretcher will be required. With a full double rope system, each rope is separately anchored and backed up, and the stretcher is then either abseiled into position or lowered and belayed from the top. As he sets off, the rescuer and his equipment are guided over the edge by an assistant. Notice that the assistant too is anchored by a safety rope. This should be standard practice when close to an exposed edge, and at all rope contact points, edge protection should be used. Stretcher delivery can be done in many different ways. In this case, a double rope descender is being used. A first responder may already be with the casualty, but if not, a rescuer should go down to him as soon as possible. This allows colleagues time to set up a full double rope stretcher system. Anyone abseiling down on a rescue must be able to get back up again if things get difficult. This rescuer has a pair of ascenders, the top one attached to his harness and the lower one to a foot loop with a safety link between the two. Climbing is performed by alternately standing and sitting. The harness ascender is pushed up until the rescuer can sit down. Then he stands up, while at the same time pushing the harness ascender further up the rope. His center of gravity should be directly above his feet when he stands in the foot loop. This is just one of many different ascending systems. Now let's look at a situation using a belayed lowering system. High above a town center building site, a protester has climbed out onto the boom of a tower crane and got into difficulties. Rather than carry all their equipment up the enclosed ladderways, the rescue team go up with a lightweight throw bag and then haul their equipment directly onto the jib. As well as more personnel, a lowering system needs excellent communications because the control team at the top may not always be able to see what's going on during the descent. In addition, any belay device they use must be able to automatically arrest a falling rescue load. The first priority is to access the casualty, ensure his immediate safety, and assess the extent of his injuries, if any. Here is the casualty waiting for help to arrive. Secured on a belay line controlled by a colleague, the first rescuer makes his way carefully along the jib towards the stranded man. As he moves, he is placing intermediate protection to limit the potential fall distance. Once he's assessed the situation, he will package the casualty in an evacuation triangle and attach a pick-off sling. It's very important at this stage to give plenty of reassurance and build up his confidence. A second member of the rescue team proceeds along the other side of the boom to deliver any requested equipment and to help with rigging and evacuation. Once he has secured himself separately to the structure, he attaches redirection pulleys so that his belay rope can be used as the belay or safety rope for the descent of the rescuer and the casualty. In the same way, the first rescuer's belay rope now becomes the lowering rope. This makes it possible for the descent to be controlled by colleagues in the crane cab. When everything is ready, the descent can begin. The casualty is lowered to the ground with the rescuer. Every rescue is unique, not only in respect of the individuals concerned, but also in terms of the environment, weather conditions, and available resources. Equally, the range of options to tackle each situation is bound to vary from one rescue team to another. One central principle, however, remains constant. The right equipment, proper technique, and a disciplined professional regard for detail remain the most important keys to success.